Okay, hello Cloud Gurus and welcome to this lecture. In this lecture we're going to look at some on-premise strategies that we can do with AWS. And essentially you're going to need to be aware of what high-level AWS services that you can use on-premise for the exam. So we'll start with database migration service, and we're going to explore each one of these in depth in a few slides. We then move on to server migration service. You can use that on-premise as well. You can use the AWS application discovery service. You can use VM import and export services. You can even download an Amazon Linux 2 as an ISO and mount it on whatever virtualization you're running, so on Hyper-V or VMware or whatever. So you can actually take your own little bit of AWS and run your own little EC2 instance on-prem as well. So let's start with database migration service, and this allows you to move databases to and from AWS. And we looked at this in the database section of the course. And essentially you might have your DR environment in AWS and your on-premise environment as your primary, and you'd be using database migration service to back your primary environment up to your AWS or your DR environment. DMS works with most popular database technologies such as Oracle, MySQL, DynamoDB, etc. And it also supports both homogeneous migrations, so we could be migrating our database, Oracle database to an Oracle database. We also support heterogeneous migration, so we could be migrating SQL Server onto Amazon Aurora, for example. So that's just a quick reminder of what database migration service is. What is server migration service? Well, basically this allows you to do incremental replications of your on-premise servers into AWS. And this could be used as a backup tool or multi-site strategy, so on-premises and off-premises, as well as a DR tool. So we could be using server migration services for our application servers and database migration servers for our actual databases themselves. We then have the AWS Application Discovery Service, and basically this helps enterprise customers plan migration projects by gathering information about their on-premise data centers. And you basically install the AWS Application Discovery agentless connector as a virtual appliance on VMware's vCenter, and it will then build a server utilization map and a dependency map of your on-premise environment. And then the collected data is retained in an encrypted format in an AWS Application Discovery Service data store, and then you can export this data as CSV files and use it to estimate your total cost of ownership on running on AWS, and then use this to plan your migration to AWS. And this data is also available in the AWS Migration Hub, where you can migrate the discovered servers and track their progress as they get migrated to AWS. So it is actually really powerful stuff. It'll basically just build out a map of your entire on-premise data center, and then it will also allow you, when you integrate it with AWS Migration Hub, you'll be able to track the progress of your migration as you go into AWS. So that's AWS Application Discovery Service. We then have VM imports and exports. So using VM imports and exports, you can migrate your existing applications into EC2, and it can also be used to create a DR strategy on AWS or use AWS as a second site. And you can also use it to export your AWS virtual machines to your on-premise data center as well. And speaking of which, AWS does allow you to download your Amazon Linux 2 as an ISO. And this works with all major virtualization providers such as VMware, Hyper-V, KVM, VirtualBox, which is Oracle's hypervisor technology, etc. So you are able to take your own little piece of EC2 and run it on-premise in your own data centers. So that is it for this lecture. Basically, going into the exam, you just need to be aware of what high-level AWS services that you can use on-premise for the exam. So we covered database migration service, server migration service, AWS Application Discovery Service, VM import and export, and then you can also download Amazon Linux 2 as an ISO. So you're now at the end of the HA section of the course. You've done really well. In the next lecture, we're just going to summarize everything that we've learned. So if you've got the time, please join me in the next lecture. Thank you.